I really like our next fight. We have the Australian Jimmy the Brute Crute taking on Modestas, and this is a great nickname, the Baltic Gladiator Bukauskas out of Lithuania, former British kickboxing champion, and in his UFC debut, very controversial end to his fight against Andreas Michailidis. And that was a fight where Michailidis, we'd seen him on the US regional scene and the regional scene over in Europe. I mean, a fighter coming out of Greece, but he was typically had competed at middleweight. So he's moving up to 205. He pushed a pace against Bukauskas. The takedown defense withstood for Bukauskas. It was those weird elbows into a finish, the old Travis Brown, and Bukauskas kind of slips away with a win. So he's on a tidy little win streak, former Cage Warriors light heavyweight champion. And like I said, the kickboxing and the kicks are what we really like to see out of Bukauskas. Throws a nice one to the body. He can mix it up quite well. The one area, and I remember us when we were previewing the fight against Michailidis, was the fact that Bukauskas, when he gets backed up against the cage, it is an issue. And with Jimmy Crute, what's he good at? Wrestling and really pressuring. And if we look at Jimmy Crute's overall body of work over on UFC stats, and again, we have 5 total fights, one of them a contender series fight against Birchler. But for takedowns per average out of the 15 minutes, he averages 4.63 at an 81% clip. That's what you like out of Jimmy Crute. That's what we've seen against some decent opponents. I know it didn't work out against Misha Serkinov, who's kind of like at the next level and who has a lot of experience as well. I mean, Jimmy Crute, you got to remember, you can see it on screen, 24 years old, Bukauskas 26. So this is very much the future of the UFC's light heavyweight division. Jimmy Crute, though, holy smokes, this guy's rolling. Bukauskas with the striking, Crute with the takedowns. It's very much a clash of styles. Does this fight interest you as much as it interests me? I actually really like this one.
You seem to be at like an 8 out of 10. I'm like a 6 out of 10. I think Jimmy Crute does have a really bright future in the UFC. I think they push him more than they would your average fighter, and mainly due to the Australia connection. Jimmy Crute's an interesting case to me because as the fight goes on, he looks exhausted from the first second, but his cardio doesn't really seem to shift. He just kind of looks that way when he fights. He looks kind of labored. One of the bigger light heavyweights you're going to see, both guys are, to be completely honest, but Jimmy Crute has a definite physicality to his game, and we've seen that in many of his fights. The Sam Alvey fight, another fight that some people thought was stopped a little early, but still, we saw a lot of his striking because he can throw really good kicks for a really big guy. He's got great kicks, good boxing, but we all know what his bread and butter is. If he can get his arms around you, get you up against the cage, kind of drag you down to the ground, not only is his submission game very high level, but he does have phenomenal ground and pound. And I do think the Michael Olejniczak win was huge because Olejniczak was a guy who, yeah, he lost to OSP, but other than that, just kind of ran through people at a certain point.
Look at that Jean Vellante fight.
Yeah, that was a really weird body punch, but Jimmy Crute was able to go out there and just steamroll him. That fight wasn't not competitive in the slightest, and that was really the coming out party for me because after he lost to Serkinov, that felt like, okay, that's your chance to really get a number next to your name. You fall short of that, the next one is going to be the important one. What adjustments could you make from your first career loss? And he seemed to make them really well. He had great wrestling, like I had said, really good submissions, and I do think he's just a poor stylistic matchup for Bukauskas in this fight because Bukauskas is going to have to keep this on the outside, really use his movement well, throw a lot of leg and body kicks, I would imagine, and try to keep it within that kicking range. Whereas Jimmy Crute, constantly, he can play that game with you if that's what you give him, but he's always going to want to get into that kind of boxing clinch range. And if he does get Bukauskas up against the cage, I have a feeling that 100% takedown defense will not be the same by the end of the fight.
And I mean, we saw it. And the reason why I bring up that takedown defense, you got to go back and watch some of the fights that Bukauskas had on the regional scene. And if we're going back to the last 5, Fight Star Championship, and then it was Cage Warriors, Marcin Wojcik, that a lot of people recognize. In that fight, it could have been an issue. In the Nosiglia fight, where he won it by knockout, but that was another issue where Nosiglia was starting to find success, and you worry. And if you look over on Tapology, out of 735 total votes, 81% going Crute, 59% saying he's going to win by submission. The odds overwhelmingly in the favor of Crute. He opened a -180 favorite. He's now -349 average on best fight odds. Bukauskas opened +155. I wish I could have got Crute when he was as low as he was. And Bukauskas now at a +270. And I know that we framed this video pretty well all Crute, but if you've watched Modestas Bukauskas, you'll know that takedown, like, I can't stress this enough. His takedown defense isn't that great. Unless it's totally turned to 180, I don't see him winning this fight over Jimmy Crute.
No, here's one really good positive, though. They're 24 and 26. You can lose at this stage in your career, and it's not the end of the world. And especially in a division like 205. Again, we hear all these new names at 205. You know, we have a new champion all of a sudden with Jan Blachowicz. There's new guys in the division. But let's be honest, it's still a fairly thin division in the men's side of things. You got to think heavyweight, light heavyweight, probably two of the more thin divisions, I would say at least. But Jimmy Crute, I do think has a good chance to kind of make his way up the rankings. I do think the Serkinov loss was a learning experience for him, and I do think he will be better because of it. But Bukauskas, even if he loses this fight, nothing to hang your hat on. If you lose to Jimmy Crute, it's one of the worst stylistic matchups in the division for you, and that's even with ranked opponents being considered. So I think Bukauskas has a very bright future, but I'm going to pick Crute in this one, and probably by submission.
Matt, both of us going with Jimmy Crute to get the win. It's a great card, great main card. Our co-main, Cyril Gahn taking on Andrade Delia, and in our main event, you've got the Korean Zombie taking on Brian Ortega. An extended look at that one, so you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt, as we always say. Let's get into it.